He was the one, shield cracked, sitting on the grid, and I'd, hey, ready to go? Come on, we're going racing today. Yeah. It's going to be fun, isn't it? I was spinning one direction. He clipped me and spun me back the other way. I kind of think the same of him today as I did back then. I sat there and watched him and listened to him. Like, man, that guy really is an asshole, isn't he? That's certain death out there, son.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Gas It Out, and it is a very special episode. I am joined, as always, by Sylvain Guintoli and Neil Hodgson. And boys, when we were over at the US Grand Prix in Austin in Texas, we had a very lucky Wednesday morning, didn't we? As we drove out about an hour away from the city of Austin to a ranch where the Schwantz, dynasty was born effectively, and we got to spend some time in the company of the man actually on my you might be able to see it, 1993 500cc world champion Kevin Schwantz, and we've got an interview for you. It's a long one, isn't it, chaps? But it's one of those, it's like we've almost done a little bit of a biography, really, haven't we, with some really interesting racing nuggets in for the ride. What do you reckon?
Yeah, I've got to say, I didn't think it was long. It went really quickly. It was funny during it. I was sat there thinking, wow, this is going to be really interesting to listen to. Obviously, as I was listening to him go on. So, you know what I'm like. I was his number one fan. When I started racing, Kevin was the man. He was part of the reason I got into racing, really. In the sort of late 80s, when I was a motocross rider, I used to watch the 500cc races and want to be Kevin Schwantz. The way he rode, everything about him was cool. The Pepsi Suzuki that turned into the Lucky Strike Suzuki, his Taichi leathers, Japanese handmade leathers, the Arai helmet, the distinctive Arai design, his style, his celebrations when he won, his aggression on the track, his quirky riding style that I copied and I've been criticised for ever since because it's the proper old school. Just everything. This cheeky little look backs he used to do. He was the king of cool. And they always say, never meet your heroes. And when I met him in the early days, in the early 90s, he was incredible. And he's been incredible ever since. So I was well excited about actually going to his house. I didn't think with the restraining order he got put in against me that I would be allowed to. But somehow it seemed to get brushed under the carpet and I was welcomed in with open arms.
Hey, and Sylvain, he's a bit before our time, isn't he? Us being that much younger than Neil, of course. But he's someone, even though it was one world championship to his name, he's someone who transcended the sport, really, wasn't it? In terms of the flamboyance, in terms of his attitude to racing, in terms of the style, all those things that Neil mentioned. And even, when you're coming through, even to the very day, you spoke to Valentino Rossi, who was his hero, Kevin Schwantz, and even Pedro Acosta. Today, I did a couple of days with him down at his home. Who's your hero? Kevin Schwantz. He's someone who goes beyond the eras, doesn't he?
Yeah, and I've got to say, I didn't really know Kevin before that. And like personalities in the paddock, we sort of come across everybody. But Kevin is he's quite private, isn't he? And then he comes to Austin. We've seen him around the paddock in Austin quite a few times, but I didn't really know him before. So this interview for me was really, really special because so Kevin, won the title 93. That's when I started to watch the races with my dad on TV, and then I started racing myself in 95. So yeah, it was the very, very start of my career when I was like 10, 11 years old. And we were there, at Kevin's place in his man cave, with the suits and all the stuff that he's kept, and I just couldn't stop thinking of my dad, thinking that if he was there in that very room, he would not know what to do with himself. It was very, very special, and it was very special to get to know Kevin a little bit more in details. His views on racing, coming back as well to his championship years, and yeah, so it was a fantastic time. I've got to say, I came out of that and it just felt like this was one of those moments in life that, you have to pinch yourself and you're like, what did we just do? So it was fantastic. Kevin was brilliant. And I think the three of us actually on the way back in the car, when we were like, wow, this was special.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned your dad. I think all of us felt the same. It was pinch yourself moments, less of us wanging on about it. It was a fleeting career, you'll discover, from Kevin Schwantz that he really had at the very top level, but boy, was it worth it. This is our chat with the 1993 500cc World Champion, Kevin Schwantz. Hello and welcome to a very, very special edition of Gas It Out. We are in the world's, but if Carlsberg made man caves, this would be the man cave and a half. We are joined by the 1993 500cc World Champion, the legend that is Kevin Schwantz. Kevin, thank you so much for letting us in here, first of all. Neil Hodgson is like a dog with two willies at the moment because he's just having the time of his life in here. But we appreciate you letting us in here to be. What I want to know, though, coming into a place like this and seeing the beautiful place that you live in, what's a normal day like for you nowadays? I know you like your fishing. You ever been tempted by anything like golf or anything? What's an average day for?
Yeah, golf tempts me, but my golf game is very military. It's left, right. I don't play golf well. I'd like to blame it on my hands and my wrist, but somebody said if your wrist doesn't bend, the golf game should be better.
Yeah, it's an advantage.
So, yeah, it should be, but it's not for me. Mountain bike, motorcycles, dirt bikes still quite a bit.
Yeah.
Fishing, whether it's down at the coast or Idaho, up there off the Snake River. Spend some time up there, a little bit of skiing in the winter, a little bit of ride the big fat tire bike in the snow in the winter. And then, once everything thaws out, dirt bikes and fishing.
Are you just like still Mr. Active then? Is that, you're obviously you spend a whole career racing motorcycles around the world. Do you still, I mean, not saying to get the drive, but do you still find you just have to be active all the time? Is that your personality of keeping moving?
To be stuck in the house, I'd have to be hurt.
Yeah. I always imagined that, but I'm just guessing that you're always out and about and doing stuff.
My dad slipped and fell just before Christmas and broke 5 ribs, punctured a lung, and he was 6 weeks before he could get back in bed and sleep. He was sleeping in his recliner chair and not being able to do anything, not even get up and walk around really. I mean, to the bathroom and back and just basic stuff. And he just, and he's back trying to get on his treadmill and do some walking. And it's, I think the less we do, the quicker we deteriorate. That's for sure.
Yeah, so true.
You got to stay active.
Yeah. So Kevin,
a little bit of pain involved with being active, but yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I guess I did it to myself, didn't I?
You had a lot of pain actually. Was it? We saw you in Italy a couple of years ago. You had your shoulder finally done. That you've been, what was it? 30 years exactly. 30
All
years
good.
That you've been struggling with it, and finally that must be a relief because you had a lot of pain in your career.
Yeah, since it dislocated itself at Donington in '94, qualifying. It's never been the same. I mean, it got to where it was bad enough that all I had to do was, I fell out of this chair and landed on it, it'd dislocate.
That was the high side, of the old hairpin. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you hit the ground.
And Bruno, I was spinning one direction, he clipped me and spun me back the other way. But I don't think he's what hurt me. I think it was the impact with the ground, the quick stop.
Yeah, that was one. We were saying on the way here, you crashed obviously in your career like everybody does. But if you look at how much they crash now, it's so much more. If a Marc Marquez who's some seasons 25, back to back. Probably on average, what were you crashing in a season? Less than 10.
If we go back and we go to Taichi leathers, 88, 89, 90. In the beginning, they were like, don't ever wear a set of leathers once you fall in them. Just hang them up, put a new set on, and they numbered each set. And in the early portion of my career, 13 Grand Prix, maybe 15, I think, at the end. So in the 13 race season, I was on set 20. So, and I think I'd get in a set and I'd maybe scuff them up a little bit. No, these will still work. these are feeling good. I like these.
Yeah.
These might be good luck. So, 20 crashes a season, practice, qualifying, testing.
All in.
All in.
That's when you did a lot of testing as well back then.
And I mean, we might stay at a track Monday, test Monday, Tuesday after a race, go to a racetrack early before they restricted you testing. You know, we'd always try and get to the next track and maybe get a day. I mean, and it's so funny now because you see guys go out and maybe tool around watching, waiting for somebody to follow. You're wasting time. We need data, you know, and back then the data you were getting was here and here, the seat of your pants and your head. But yeah, I mean, the more laps you could get, the more time you could be going around the racetrack, the more you learned. At least it seemed like that for me.
And tell us about the early days then. Did you motocross? I know you did dirt track, but how did the start look?
First competition I ever rode was Observe Trials.
Oh, right.
And then I got a TY80, and I thought, well, shit, this little thing runs pretty fast. I'm going to start trying to go through maybe do some jumps with it through the whoops. But it's so steep in the front. It was, the next thing I knew, I was freaking cartwheeling the thing. And so I was like, hey, I remember the year, it was a YZ80, and it was a G. So a G, I think, was an 80 model.
Yeah.
So 82, I graduated high school. So in 1980, I finally got a YZ80. And I went straight from an 80 to a 125. No, I went 80 to 100, and then went from 100 to a 465 motocrossing. And I used to ride the intermediate class locally. And then got to where I was pretty consistent at the front. I thought, well, I'm going to, you know, there's a couple guys that if they're there, I have to race. So I'm gonna go ahead and start riding the expert class. And then you realize, those guys, and that's not the pro guys. I mean, the guys at the very front are hoping that they could make it when the Supercross or the outdoor motocross comes to Texas, that they could qualify and get an entry. But yeah, I rode the Houston Supercross, 82, 83. Heat race, semi, last chance, load up, go home.
I did not know.
And in 83, I got a really good start in my heat race. Second into the first turn behind Mike Bell. And I think, this is all I needed. I just need to be closer to the pointy end of the field, and I'll see what the fast guys do. Round, remember the Supercross used to have an over-under? Yeah. Well, the over was no problem. Went around, you come back. As you're coming at it to go under it, there's it's one of these, just square-edged, just basically to slow you down. And Mike Bell at 6'6" in factory Yamaha over the back fender, whoa, no problem. Kevin Schwantz sees it. Oh, that's the way you do that. I cartwheeled out the other end of the tunnel, and I was like, yeah, okay. Because having graduated high school in 82, I was working at my parents' dealership.
How old was you then? 16?
84, I'd have been 20.
Okay.
So 82, 83, 82 high school, 83, I finally said, no, that's it. So February, Supercross was in town. So then I decided, no more motocross, that's it. You know, I ride dirt bikes, I'll play, I have fun, but those guys are riding and training all week, and my parents are pretty adamant that this business is going to be yours one day. You need to be here working. You know, if you need to sneak away every now and then for a Saturday, because Saturdays were our busy day. Saturday, yeah, maybe we'll let you go if we can, we know about it ahead of time. And then at the end of 83, some buddies of mine came in the shop that were road racing. They said, hey, I know you're not riding motocross anymore, but why don't you come do an endurance race with us? I was like, road racing? How can that be any fun? So I thought, well, they're going to let me endurance race with them. So I went and rode their bike in the endurance race. But planning ahead, I asked my parents, I said, can I take, Yamaha had the Vision, it was an XV 550. And we had a demo. And I said, can I take that? I'll tape up the blinkers and wire the drain plug, and I'll race that thing, put some good tires on it. So I sprinted that on Sunday. But in the endurance, after an hour on the bike, I was as fast as my buddies that had been racing 10 years, 8 years, 10 years. I thought, oh. So I went back home. I was like, hey, Mom and Dad, next year I really want to try road racing. So I started buying. They're like, yeah, okay, you can do that. Started buying, got leathers made. Started Yamaha FJ600 was 84, and so that's when my road racing started was 84. So club raced the entire 84 season, and then at the end of 84, having road raced against John Ulrich, John said, hey, I heard Suzuki's looking for a new rider. You want to come out for a tryout? I was like, no, you're kidding. I said, of course I do. He said, well, I can't pay you expenses to come out. But he goes, what I'll do is I'll get my endurance bike, which was an 1150 or something, Suzuki. He said, I'll get my bike. We'll go to Willow Springs the day before, and I'll let you do some laps on a fast bike because you've never ridden anything but that friggin' 600. And I said, oh, okay, great. So slicks, big brakes. Team Hammer was John's team, is John's team, still is. And went out and tested it at Willow and went faster than anybody had been on his bike by like 2 seconds. John's like, I think you're going to do okay tomorrow. Got there, I'm standing in my leathers waiting on Sunday for the Yost truck to show up. Practice is going on. Oh, shit, it's almost 9 o'clock. Practice is over at 9. Truck pulls up, bike rolls out. I get out onto the track to come around to the checkered flag. Just an out, done. Came in, I said, couldn't tell anything. He said, well, let's just go with the first race, see what happens. Didn't never practice the start, did I? Big horsepower motor, dry clutch. Whoa, stalled it on the line. I'm sure everybody's, that's what we fucking figured he'd do. Somebody came out and gave me a shove. I got going, broke the track record, the Superbike, AMA Superbike track record, 2 of the 8 laps of that race. Got to the front, won the race. Came in, and it was like, the Yost guy's like, can you sign this? It's like, you guys just hold on. We got another race to do. And in the second race, of course, I was a little bit better prepared. Still had to start at the back because I didn't have any AFM points. And Cooley was there. There was a bunch of fast Southern California guys there trying to finish off the AFM and also get some testing in for the next season and beat them all. The first race was F1. Some of the guys rode that, but everybody was in the Superbike race and beat them pretty handily, and lap records a couple more laps, I think.
In just your second season on tarmac?
Well, yeah, 83 started, end of 84.
Rush. I mean, was because obviously that was the time in the Grand Prix world. Obviously, Kenny had come over and Randy had then gone over, and the Americans were starting to take charge. Was everyone all well aware of each other at that? Does that make sense? As in, because I don't know how connected everything was into, the American system and then or into the world system. Were you very well aware of what they were doing?
No, I hadn't even really paid any attention to road racing at that point. Yeah. I got a ride for 85 to do to do Daytona on the Yost bike and the West Coast races. 85, we didn't have the GSXR yet. The bike that's in the garage is the one I raced. It was a GS 700. And at Daytona, the clutch on the starting line, boom, I made it to the first turn. But yeah, and once 85 got going, and then I signed with Suzuki for 86, 87 to ride the new GSXR here in America. Yeah, I probably started noticing what was going on internationally a little bit more. But even better was 86. Steve McLaughlin came to me and said, hey, you want to go to the match races? I was like, where are those? He goes, in England. I was like, fucking right, I've never been there. He goes, I'll find you a good bike. Famous last words, huh? And it ended up being Tony Rudder's TT bike from the year before. Oh my God. So, super stock bike, perfect 750, just enough, I think had just been tuned enough. It was absolutely perfect for the very, very inclement weather that we had at the match races. And Sheen, I met Sheen there, and Sheen took me under his wing. After the race, he said, hey, can you stay another week? I'd like to get a 500 out of the museum that I just put there. I'll take you to Snetterton, we'll go testing. He goes, and maybe come back and do the race of the year. I was like, really? I mean, you're looking at yourself going, hold on, wake up. I tested, went well, went to the race of the year, almost won it. And
was that Mallory?
Yeah. And then Hairnet beat me.
Roger. Yes, Roger Burnett.
Yeah, I like
Go
that.
on, Roger.
He's going to like that one.
Well, I have to make him feel good, though, because if you look on the throttle housing, the mag throttle housing, that's a very similar, no, it's not even close to what I raced. That's the carbon framed 86 bike that I think I rode and tested a little bit in 86 as I was doing those 3 Grand Prix. I rode Holland, Belgium, Misano. But I don't think I liked it. I stayed on the aluminum frame one that I tested that Barry had. So gone to the museum, they'd put a new throttle housing on it. There's a pin in it that stops the throttle going back too far, letting some of the cables jump off. They didn't do that on the bike out of the museum. And in the race, about 2/3 distance, I was like, fuck, this thing's kind of feeling kind of slow. It may be blowing up. I'm not pulling in. I'm running up front. I'm just going to keep gassing it up. Come to find out, the pin wasn't aerodited, so it vibrated out, which let 2 of the carburetor cables jump off. So I was riding a 250 at the end. That's why he got me.
That's why you got
That's why he got me.
I don't think he knows that, because Roger does mention this victory on a regular basis. His words were, I think that Kevin Schwantz is overrated. Roger is
Yeah.
not like that at all.
Yeah, no. And actually, I saw him at Cremona, too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, because he manages
Ryan Vickers, yeah.
So then, what was the next stage?
Yeah, I mean, after race of the year, Sheen said, "Come on, we're going to Heron Suzuki. I'm going to make sure that they get you a decent bike, and we get to go to whatever Grand Prix you can come to this year that don't conflict with the U.S. schedule." So, 84, I'm production racing at the beginning of the year. I get a tryout, and in 86, I'm going to race some Grand Prix.
Grand Prix, wow.
What?
That is,
I mean, just
steep.
That's all right.
That's steep, isn't it?
yeah, really all happening really quick, and everybody's like, "Oh, what were you thinking?" I was like, I was thinking this is the coolest fucking thing I've ever done. I don't care if I fail miserably. I'd go back to the house and say, look what I did. Look what I did.
I did some Grand Prix, you know, yeah.
Yeah. You know, and I remember my dad and I walking up to scrutineering in Assen, and Kenny Roberts happens to be the first person that we see. Well, and my family knew Kenny from having our Yamaha dealership. The flat track was one of the first races of the season in Houston in the Astrodome, and Kenny would always come. It seemed like Yamaha would always have, we were one of the bigger dealers in Houston. They'd always have an open house at our place. And so I had gotten to meet Kenny. And yeah, I kind of think the same of him today as I did back then. I sat there and watched him and listened to him. I was like, man, that guy really is an asshole, isn't he? You know, in his own Kenny type way, he knows how to get people to do shit for him. Yeah. You know, whether it's talking down to him or whatever. But anyway, Kenny was the first guy we ran into as we're walking up to, we were scrutineering, and I got my leathers with me, and I'm all freaking excited about this. He's like, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Oh, got a ride this weekend." He says, "Yeah." He says, "You picked a really good place to do it, didn't you?" You know, back then, Assen wasn't as wide as these two sofas are apart, and it had no curbs. So just miss, and now you're off. Once you got off in the grass, and the sand, you know. Yeah. Luckily, didn't end up in any of those that weekend. But yeah, I have in Assen. Anyway, Kenny was pretty funny. He's like, "Man, this is the worst place. I would have never thought to come here for my first Grand Prix."
Wow.
And at that point, though, we just like Kenny a hero to you. We go, wow, this is Kenny Roberts, the Kenny Roberts.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, you're watching him in the Astrodome, watching him do what he did. I knew enough about racing to know who Kenny Roberts was. That's for sure.
And what about Spencer? Because Spencer was round about that, like his prime, round about then.
Yeah, you know, and that was 86. And I can say in my Grand Prix career, I never raced a competitive Freddie Spencer. I never raced the Freddie.
Yeah, sure.
You know, I raced In 86, he was here, he was there, he was trying, he was making some races, wasn't making them all. The only race I raced him where he was 100%, Freddie, was Daytona 85, and my bike didn't make it to the first turn. So no real, I mean, I can always, I mean, you look back and see who he beat and how he beat him. You have to think, tip of the hat to the guy. He obviously had his game on. So.
We were in Guyana last week, and we were talking because of the roster of names who had raced there. We've obviously gone back there, and then we were talking in the car on the way here about a sinkhole opening up. I mean, like you talk about Assen there, no curbs, crowned roads, and all this. What was the messiest situation you came up then? I mean, sinkholes pretty rare that we've had obviously this time in Brazil. Of all the places you were going, the spas, that kind of thing. What's the most sketchy?
Like a standout.
Yeah,
I think Spa is probably it, and that is knowing how bad the weather is there and how typically you're going to get some rain throughout the weekend, if not all weekend. The fact that the paint had nothing of any kind of sand or grit to it. You had the time coming out of the hairpin headed down past the pits. You had the time you moved to the wall to attack that corner at the bottom, Eau Rouge? Yeah. To attack Eau Rouge. You had to time it so that you split the paint. Because you hit the paint and it was whoop, whoop, and you just missed your line by 3 feet, 2 feet, 3 feet. So that for me was probably one of the trickiest situations I remember.
And it's fast.
Yeah.
You were saying
you're going there too.
Yeah. We still race there.
Yeah.
Obviously, they've improved a lot. Sort of the infrastructure, they make more runoff and stuff, but it's wild. It's a shame that Grand Prix is not going there, though. I don't know what you think about that, but it's a track.
It's funny because I remember going there and, 220, I think it was 25. I got into the 23s or into the 24s and nobody else did. And Gardner came up and goes, "What are you thinking? That's certain death out there, son. You gotta." I was like, "You're just mad because I went faster than you."
And at the time, the reality is you weren't thinking because you were just attacking. You were young, fearless.
Absolutely, and every step along the way, it's like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. We're gonna just keep doing this until somebody says, "Hey, we don't need you here anymore." And luckily, it was my decision at the end and not theirs.
I'm just thinking, I'm smiling to myself. He did Macau.
Oh.
Yeah, talk about sketches. Exactly.
Hold on. But
what was that all about?
I did Macau because it was a week-long vacation in Thailand for the entire team. I was like, you guys have had to put a bunch of my shit back together all season long. I'll go sacrifice myself but I was the only one on a 500.
Yeah.
So I didn't, I went hard for probably 6 or 8 laps in qualifying because Haslam was there. He's like, hadn't broke my lap record yet. I said, I hadn't had to. I got 5 seconds on the field. Come on. Anyway.
You've still got that front tyre never touched the ground. That's one of the coolest things. You've seen it, haven't you? Yeah. You've seen it, haven't you?
Yeah, I've seen the images.
Where it's just wheeling everywhere. It's just out of every corner. What do you think of that track, though? Just obviously
I went back and did a 40th anniversary of the event. Scared myself riding a street bike around going slow. I was like, I raced here? You're kidding me. They've changed this thing. They've moved the walls in or something. It was, sketchy.
So when you've got there then, is obviously you and Wayne then, we talk about rivalries and how was it all developing at this time? Were you aware of each other at that time?
The funniest part was everybody got an invite to go to England. And none of the manufacturers were going to let the bikes be sent over. I'm sure that Suzuki and Yamaha and Honda all said, "You don't send bikes, we won't have to send bikes, so let's not do it." But when I went there, next thing you know, I'm freaking getting a test on a 500, going back to do some Grand Prix. Rainey the whole time just going, "Oh my God, why didn't I go? I should have been there." And the next season, everybody went in full factory support of the match races, which is kind of cool to see.
Was that the year with you and him colliding at Brands, coming out out of clearways, your foot coming off?
Well, and the worst part about it is you can't see is there's oil dry. Somebody there was about that much room on the inside by the curb that you could get to. And you kind of had to get, your ideal line was a little wider entry and then a little bit later apex. But because of the oil dry, you had to run in tight. And so I went in a little bit wide, a little bit inside, and he just, so I'm leaned over trying to stay out of the oil dry, and he knocks me straight across it. And I think the bike went, ooh, and squared up. I got back, and the gas went right back underneath him, and I broke myself in the next turn. But yeah, we get back, we get on the podium after that. He's like, hey, I said something to him. And he said, that's just racing. I was like, okay. So the next race is where I try and get underneath him, left, right on the clear, whatever that right-hander is out on the straightaway. And I'm like trying to nudge him, get him to move out, and he just leaning on me. So afterwards, he's like, hey, what's that? And I was like, this is a little payback, isn't it? And I don't think we ever talked to each other after that for about 4 seasons.
Wow, isn't that interesting? And that's what we love about our sport. When a rivalry starts and it becomes intense, that's what then it brings out the best in you. You bring out the best in him, and then then it's on, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, my nights of rest depend on whether I was in front of him or not. 100%.
Wow, I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
And I look back at it and say, well, and I had it much tougher than he did because I had to beat 2 of them. I had to beat him and Kenny. Every time I went out for a practice session, fucking there's that son of a... I'm not going to do Roberts was somewhere on the track watching where I was maybe better than they were in a session before. It's like, oh, okay, I'm just going to keep that. I'm not going to remember. Remember you're sitting there, okay? Don't show him anything, So it was, and I think it was 88. Yeah. I won Japan, then I won Germany. Wayne still hadn't won a race, and he finally wins at Donington. And I think after he won at Donington, I think we started, if we were in the same room, we could notice that each other were there. It wasn't one of these. And then slowly on podiums started talking a little bit, and over the next couple of seasons, by 91, probably you might see us having a beer together on Sunday after.
Right.
Yeah.
But like you were completely different characters. Or that's the way it seemed from the outside.
Yeah.
Obviously, you seem much more flamboyant.
He was the one shield cracked, sitting on the grid, and I'd, hey, ready to go? Come on, we're going racing today. Yeah. It's gonna be fun, isn't it? Yeah. Get away. Yeah, it was funny, and that was just everything I could do to get in his head.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I was just thinking then when you mentioned the match races, just to go back to that. Like back then, that was on the BBC.
Yeah. That's
and that's when you had 3 channels in the UK. Just 3 channels. Like I sat at home then as let me think what I'd have been 13, 14 years old, watching the match races. Everybody watched it. It was so cool.
I left England after the match races, after testing the 500. Barry said, come back for the race here. Barry paid my expenses to come back. I remember coming to passport control. I go, oh boy, passport control. Passport control. I was like, hey, Mr. Schwantz, we're so glad you're back. We're going to watch you on TV this weekend. You're like, you got to be kidding me. I said, when I go back into America, where you been? Well, racing motorcycles? Oh, special line for you over there. we need to see your bags and maybe check. Anyway, it was really strange going back to a country that I'd never been before, and somebody, and walking down the street and getting a record, you're like, fucking TV, what a difference television makes.
Yeah, and obviously you're well aware, you were clearly popular worldwide, but in the UK, you were the man. Everyone loved you. Did you feel that? Did you ever feel like almost a special link to the Brits?
Yeah, because I hated the US Grand Prix so much. Laguna Seca was, and Kenny and Wayne and the Yamaha guys spent numerous days, just days on end, testing. They were always so good there. And I just couldn't accept defeat. It's like, I'm either going to friggin' send this thing to the fence trying to do it, but everybody here is going to know that I'm not laying down and playing dead. And Donington was where our team was based. And, you know, as it got to the point where you had to nominate a track as your test track, we nominated that. Funny story, on a test day that was wet and nasty and couldn't do anything, and journalists were there, and they're like, what are we going to do about the journalists? Aren't going to have anything to cover. Barrow says, oh, come on, I'll put them in the rent car. Old hairpin on its roof. Oh. Journalists in the back going, oh, man, this is really cool.
That was always going to happen.
Is this what you guys do on the days you don't really get to ride? But, yeah, and, to win the British and come back in the garage afterwards, and family, all the mechanics are 90% of them were English. Yeah. All of them had family there. It was definitely a to-do afterwards. So.
God, and other historic moments at Donington. I was just picturing you waving
the flag.
Waving the flag at Redgate, the oil flag. Have you got it? You've not got it. He's got it. I mean, that's just, wow.
Oh, yes, there.
But really, that is it.
Signed by the marshals.
Jesus. Like,
and you know what's funny is it initially started out as whoever was in charge back then come into my garage and said, Kevin, we're going to need you to go on television and personally apologize to the marshals. I said, for what? They said, well, you with the flag, you made them look kind of, you embarrassed them. I was like, they should be embarrassed. So yeah, I mean, it started off, they wanted me to apologize. I said, well, you guys going to be waiting for a while, because I got nothing to say about being sorry. Yeah. Gardner said the reason he won the race was because I was standing out there with the oil flag, and just around the corner is a Yamaha with a gearbox out of it.
Yeah, Foggy was in that race, wasn't he?
Yeah. And then the crash, that was the crash at the end of, was that 93 then? Yeah, that was the opening lap when Doohan wasn't he? Yeah. Missed his brake mark.
I had out qualified the field by over a second, and I was like, Wayne was a little bit iffy. He had fallen somewhere and his back was a little sore. I was like, I was thinking even Catalora can beat him today, and Barros was good. My teammate was pretty fast, and then it all happened.
Yeah. Yeah, and at that period, that was like, because you seemed to have bad luck as well. Mm-hmm. Like, really, you did, didn't you? Like, if you fell, you broke something, or you got involved in incidents.
Ass and a simple little hit the ground, sliding, and the bike fuel tank lands on my hand. Wow. Dislocated my. That's what.
I was going to say, is that the injury from you?
That's the beginning of the end. That was, yeah. So.
And what year was that?
That was 94. That was
that bike. Yeah. With the number one plate. Mm-hmm. The weight of carrying the number one.
That thing is heavy.
The number one.
Somebody said, I think Wayne said, now the trick is you got to defend it. I was like, okay, I'll try.
Now what you got to do, the trick is to win it, to win one. You know what I mean? Like, we know, don't we? Obviously, from the World Superbikes, I'm milking mine.
Well, it's there forever, isn't it?
It's there forever. We don't like to talk about it, Sylvain, do we?
Can't take it from you.
So just tell us about that year, because obviously it was my first year as full-time Grand Prix rider, racing 125s. I spent more time, Kevin, honestly, I spent more time watching, because I was just a young fan. So I'd come in after a practice session. My dad was my crew chief. I'd speak to him for like 5 minutes. He'd go, how's the bike? I'd go, yeah, it's all right. Seems good. Like, that was about as technical as we got, because I knew the 500s were out next, and I just wanted to get my legs off. I remember being at Eastern Creek watching into turn one, watching the 500s into that, because that was my first Grand Prix in 93. So I was there.
My bike was good there that year, too.
That was an eye-opener for a young 18-year-old to watch the 500s tip into this ridiculously fast left-hander. It's a proper corner, that at Eastern Creek, isn't it? So yeah, tell us a bit about...
Nice big seam in the middle of it, too, that just
upset you at the wrong point.
Everything just at the wrong point. Yeah, 93 started off good. It was, Australia, Malaysia, Japan. I didn't win Japan, but it's funny because afterwards Dr. Costa said, sometimes maybe not winning Japan's a good thing. And I was like, what do you mean? I freaking love to win here because it's job security. If I can win the Japanese, I bet you I'm going to have a ride next year. But yeah, the whole season, everything kind of falls into place. Weren't making a bunch of mistakes. I mean, I was still crashing every now and then, but not crashing out of points paying position in a race and not hurting myself most of the time. You know, we had done so much testing. When we finished the 92 season, did we finish in Brazil? No, we finished in South Africa. And then we went back to Jerez, and we did a 3-day test, and we went through. So changed crew chiefs into 91 to 92. Stuart Shenton, new crew chief, and Stuart's like, you know, I didn't really get to test with you all the off season. We're going to really do some good testing this winter. Did 3 days going through everything we'd tried all season long because 92 was horrible. We won Mugello, and I don't think we were even a threat to win anything else. And I don't know how you win Mugello and you can't do anything anywhere else. Because one of the trickiest, for me, one of the, you know, elevation, downhill turns, uphill, braking, everything. It kind of throws it all at you. But how we were good there and couldn't be good anywhere else. Anyway, Stuart said 3 days, going through it. We're going to do 1 day. We're going to try this stuff. Next day, we're going to try the same stuff again. It's exactly the same. I'm like, this is ridiculous. He says, just listen to me and get out there and do your job. Test. The third day, went back through the stuff that we thought we liked and came up with about that much stuff that we thought was good, and they went back to the factory and went to work. Knowing what we didn't like and what they had tried. And I think a couple more big 3-day tests, even before we ever went to Japan and started testing the new bike that gets built typically in January-ish, you know, and you go to Ruyo to test. It's like, you can't really test much at Ruyo except try and not die. It's one of those tracks that there is absolutely not a lick of runoff. But, you know, got to Australia, and the bike was really good. It handled great. The one problem we had with it was getting it off the line. And I don't remember what exactly it was, carburation-wise, but it would, and it really, I mean, I was on pole at Eastern Creek, and I was 15th into the first turn. And then it was boom, 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 boom. I finally got in sight of the front, and then it started, I got to the front, and then it started to rain. And I'm like, oh, great. So I slow down, Chandler comes by, Rainey comes by. I was like, I'm gonna let you guys show me where it's wet and where it's slick. And then when it quits raining, I'm gonna go ahead and put my head back down. And that's what we did, and we won the race almost easy. And I thought, man, all that friggin' hard work really has paid off. You know, and then went to Malaysia and had an off weekend, but still finished third. But was the distance to the front was a little more than you really would have liked to have seen. It wasn't a second or 2 or 3. It was 8 or 10. Like, wow, that's a half a second a lap almost. We're getting beat pretty bad at a half second a lap. Got to Japan, one of my favorite places to race, and everything kind of was better. Got held up a little bit by Honda starting the last lap. Got back to Wayne and just finished behind him, finished second. I thought, you know what, we're going, because I'd had first, a second, and a third. And I think he won the other 2 and was second in Japan. So you had a little bit of a points lead going in. Jerez, we got rid of it. We beat him. Barros came by me. My teammate came by me. Well, I waved my teammate, but I was like, show me, buddy. Because Wayne and I had about 5 seconds on everybody. And my board goes 4, 3, 2, 1 each lap. And I'm thinking, who in the hell is coming?
This guy's coming fast.
I want to see this. Yeah. And I looked back and saw it was Barros. I'm like, fucking perfect. So going into the last turn, I was like, show me. Come on, buddy. I'm going to friggin' lasso you and go. he pulled me away from Wayne, and then he crashed over in the Nieto corner.
Yeah, that was going to be his first win, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah. Instead, it had to wait until he almost had another one in Assen.
That's
the same
right.
year.
Yeah.
And then he ended up winning Harama.
Yeah, at the end of the season, the last race of the year.
Yeah. But anyway, so we got points back on Wayne in Jerez, Austria, whatever. I don't even remember where we went after that. But a couple races into being in Europe, I'd won 2 or 3 more races. We'd gotten the lead, and we were just each weekend. We'd show up, unload the bike, and it was that close. I mean, we were testing race tires before the second session on Friday. Whereas normally it was like Friday practice, Friday qualify, Saturday we're still friggin' looking for something Saturday morning. But I mean, the bike was just, and I'll tell Stuart, the bike was just good, wasn't it? He says, we were doing so much shit to that bike every weekend, you just got no idea. From ride height to to offsets and stuff, what all they were changing, I don't know. And then gearboxes. It's funny, when I first got into Grand Prix racing, I was like, I don't know this track. He said, well, here, just try this gearbox. And I'd come in every time. It's the fucking gearbox is too long. Give me, it needs to be shorter. Shorter in each gear or shorter overall? Oh, no, each gear, this gear and that gear. And so they'd pull the gearbox, and at the end of the weekend, we'd be back with the same settings we started off with.
Familiar story, that.
Full circle.
That happens.
Just complete.
Happens a lot.
So many times. How much data did you have then? As in, like
We were
telemetry.
getting suspension travel and throttle position, and of course engine RPM. So I was telling them, you guys don't listen to me on the gearbox. I'm going to tell you what I like and don't like about the bike and what it's doing. I said, but you fine tune the gearbox off of what you see on the data.
I suppose at the time, like, the feedback from the rider was so much more important than it is now, because now they have so much data. It's almost, it's good to get a feel for the sort of like the crew chief, but back then you would base decisions mainly on what the rider tells you. So
Yeah, and until we had that stuff, it was all based on the rider. Before, and that's like I told us about the gearbox story. It's such, you can end up chasing your tail the whole weekend. Whereas if you say, no, you just worry about what the bike's doing. We're going to get the gearbox done. Just one less thing. What RPM is it coming out of the corner? I'm like, do you expect me to look at the friggin' tach? It's like asking me what's the water temp. I was like,
I remember those conversations. Though.
It's you need to tell me what the water temperature is, because I can't even hardly see that little silly gauge on the dash. I sure can't now, but.
Would you say you was a rider that was good at feedback?
I was good at telling you what I didn't like about it. I had no idea what to tell you about. Did it need compression? Did it need rebound? Did it need more spring? Did it need ride height? All I know is ride height made my Suzuki that wouldn't turn, but it'd only do it for about 3 laps. In the back, it'd start wanting to pass you up because it would just spin the back tire right off the thing.
You love sliding it, didn't you?
I was like, that's the way it's supposed to be. That's a better show.
It looks good. Not quite the Randy Bemola with the Pirellis. Not to that level.
Man.
That was entertaining. So
it was a big crash in Guanya.
Exactly.
I remember he was looking back.
Yeah.
Whoa!
But can you believe he was actually doing that though? It was crazy, wasn't it? The time must have been awful. Like, to have it literally on full lock. And shoulder.
Yeah, you would think, did they put a rain tire on that thing?
Yeah, do you know what I mean? That's what it looked like.
Yeah.
So go on, continue with 93. I'm intrigued.
And halfway into Assen, which halfway point was always Assen. We got there, we were good. Barros right there, Doohan right there. We were all, it's like, yeah, Wayne had gone home.
That's it,
Yeah, he had decided that, because I think he crashed, 93 would have been Nürburgring. He had a crash leaving the horseshoe coming out to the last turn, and the bike got on top of him. He ended up riding the race and finishing, but I think the next round from Germany was Assen, and he went to Assen Road and said, this place is so physical, I can't. So he had gone No, that was 92. He went home.
Oh, right.
So he was there, but he finished off the podium. And another one that kind of got me was Austria, because it was me and Barros and Doohan, me and Barros and Doohan, me and Barros and Doohan, and then I get to the podium and it's me and Doohan and Rainey, and I'm like, "The fuck are you doing here?" Barros got held up by a back marker and then shook his fist at him going up. Wayne, whoa!
I remember that as well.
Yeah, it took some points, some points that would have helped me.
Yeah.
But anyway, Assen winning that race, being at the front, Wayne, maybe he slid up and finished third. I don't remember. Yeah, I think he did because Barros had that crash late in the race. But yeah, and halfway season and 18 points, not quite a full race yet. Went to Barcelona, got beat, lost some points. Next race, I forget how it all went from there, but just slowly to Donington built on it, and at Donington had less than just under, I think 21 or 22 points lead in the championship. Had out-qualified everybody by a full second. Really felt like Barros could be in between us for sure. Catalora maybe because Wayne wasn't 100%. And then, we get
cleaned out.
We get torpedoed on the first lap, and you go home that night with 2 points in the championship from 22 to 20.
That must have
from 22 to 2.
Yeah.
And a hand that was a little bit beat up, and you can talk about confidence, and even something that's not your own doing. Your confidence on the bike is not there to do with it what you had been doing and what you want to do.
Yeah, I was going to say, where was your mindset after that? Did that really hit you? Because you're just like, wow.
It's like,
all that work, all that to build an advantage.
All friggin' summer long so far, gone.
Yeah.
And then go to Checo next. They were dynamite there. I think I struggled to finish fifth. And then to Misano. And I remember riding by, seeing the ambulance, thinking, okay, just keep your head down, just stay focused. It had gotten from Wayne was leading the championship 25, 20, 16, 13, 11, 2, 14. He was 12 or 13 points in the lead in the championship. And I'm thinking, well, I'm third. That's 15. I'm back in the lead. We're going to Laguna. Go to my motorhome after the race, showering, cleaning up, sitting there thinking about it. And I look outside, and there's freaking all these journalists standing at the door. I was like, what's this all about? They open the door, and they're like, hey, can you talk? I was like, yeah, sure. Well, Wayne's never going to ride again. I was like, those Roberts guys will come up with some pretty good stories, won't they? Until I get to Laguna Seca and Wayne's not there, I don't believe anything. And then I went over and found Dr. Costa, and Costa told me, he says, it's true.
Did they know straight away?
I think they did. Yeah. Or this is several hours after the event. The crowds had gone. There were still journalists and people there. But, I remember, when I heard it from Costa, I was like, whew, wow. That's not what you expect a championship to feel like.
No.
I can imagine the conflicting emotions in all that situation at that time, and the rivalry and everything sort of all building up into it, isn't it? That's the thing.
It's horrendous. I remember the ripple effect through the paddock. I was there, like I said, I was a young lad, and the ripple effect, the shock, because we're all aware of the dangers of this sport. It's obviously when we've seen obviously people lose their life doing what they love, but it strangely seemed to hit harder. Did that one, and I don't know why. It was horrendous being in the paddock at the time.
And I think how many more times have I been on the ground than he has, and how many bigger crashes? How many? Yeah.
It's just not fair, is it? But that's what
part of what the risk is we take, I guess.
Exactly, and we're usually young, and you're just focusing on
Yeah,
what you're doing.
You've said it before.
I've always said it to people. People have always talked about injuries throughout all our careers. You know, your mates are always.
Yeah,
Are you
and
not
the
worried,
risks.
Are you not worried about getting hurt? And you're just like,
You never think about it.
never think about it. 'Cause you always,
If when you start thinking about it,
you're done.
That's it.
That's when you have to stop.
94, after I got hurt, after my, and I'm riding hurt, I'm thinking to myself, wow, I get back where I'm almost fit for Laguna Seca, then I have a crash there, dislocate my hip, and I should have said, but you have 3 or 4 months in the off season. Oh my God, I'm feeling fit. I'm feeling healthy again. There's, most of the pain's gone. I'm going to try again in 95. And that was the silliest thing I ever did was try and race in 95. It was like, I was out there. Not only was I endangering myself, but a bunch of other people too.
Including you were out there, weren't you?
Yeah.
In 95.
Hey, Kevin, you're not the first rider to do a year too many, and you won't be the last.
Yeah.
I don't know many people, motorcycle racers, that retired and said,
walk away.
Do you know what I did? I stopped at the exact right moment. The majority, I'd say probably 80% all say, I don't know why I did that extra year or.
Well, I did 3 races, and then on the plane home, Wayne comes up. Wayne didn't come up to me. Kenny came back from first class to business class. My dad and I were sitting there, and he's like, "Hey, Kenny, Wayne wants to talk to you." So Kenny took my seat, and I went up and talked to him. He's like, "Dude, what are you doing out there?" And I said, "What are you?" And at this point, we had started talking, but me and him talking, and him in a wheelchair, I hadn't really gotten comfortable with that yet.
I understand that.
And I'm like, what are you talking about? What am I doing? I'm friggin' racing. He goes, "No, you're not." He goes, you're out there. He goes, "You're out there racing, you think, but it's not you. You're gonna end up hurt."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Huh?" Of course, wasn't a very long conversation, and then back to my seat, and Kenny back to the front, and the whole time, rest of the flight home, I'm making it to myself. He's just still mad because I'm still out there doing it. I got home, got back to Texas, and thought about it. I was like, huh, maybe he's right.
Yeah. And he was right.
Couple of meals, we get up. Beatty had come back to Texas, and he's okay. Come on, Kev. He stayed in the guest house, and I was in my house. And he came. I says, "Okay." He says, "We're going to leave. What time are we leaving?" I said, "Oh, whenever you're ready." He's like, what do you mean, whenever I'm ready? I said, "Whenever you're ready. I'm not going." He's like, "What?" And we were going for a test. We weren't even going for a race yet, but it was a test week ahead of the race or something we were supposed to go do. And he goes, "Why aren't you going?" I said, "I'm done." So he was the first one to hear it.
Really?
Yeah.
What did it feel like saying those words?
Yeah, I think it was easier saying it to him because then I had to call my parents who had already gone to Europe. Then I had to call Gary and tell him to tell the team. So it was a whole lot. I think it was a whole lot easier telling Beatty because I think he was like, "Fuck, good thing," Not only do I think that's better for you, but now I don't have to race anymore either. So,
Did it feel like a relief?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
A massive relief.
And I think when I finally went back to Mugello a couple months later, everybody was like, "Fucking, you friggin' look completely different." It's like this weight that's been on your shoulders for 6 or 8 seasons is gone.
And was a lot of that from you?
Yeah, no,
Personal pressure.
absolutely. Yeah, I mean, the team, I'm sure when I was crashing out of the lead of a race, at Jerez, 5 seconds in front, 6 laps to go, the guys are going, "Fuck, God, what is his problem?" But, I think most of the mechanics all came up and said, "Dude, that's the right decision."
And did you, in that sort of the year following that, did you have a little bit of back and forth, or did you always then feel like that was the right decision? Because loads of riders retire at the right moment or not, but then you have that moment where you sort of doubt yourself and you don't know if you made the right choice, or you miss it so bad, you miss the adrenaline, and really hard to find anywhere else. Yeah. Did you ever think back?
I think I probably watched Well, of course, I went from Mugello. I went to the rest of the Grand Prix. Suzuki's like, you just go the rest of the races. We'll continue to pay your contract through this year. My contract was up, I think, at the end of '94 anyway, into '95 anyway. But I didn't, and I was pretty good about realizing that if I got hurt, I always have and still have in my mind that if I take a month off the bike, it's going to take 3 times that long to get back to where I was when I was lap record, pace. Get hurt, take some time off. So I was always convinced I needed to get back on the bike before I was 100% physically fit, because if I was still out there looking after an injury a little bit, trying to be a little bit cautious, I was going to be able to get my head back up to speed. Because I feel like we get hurt, we get off the bike, okay, I'm back physically fit, I need to go. I'm 100%, I'm back on the bike. No, you're not. You hadn't been going 180 miles an hour in a month. Something's going to sneak up on you and get you. So I always felt like I needed a little extra time, and so if I started back a little bit before I was 100% healthy, that was better for me because I could work into it. And then a couple weeks in, okay, I'm back. Now I can start pushing the envelope again. So,
did you feel like you needed something to fill the hole after racing though? Like you said, you weren't tempted back. But did you feel like, because how old were you when you retired? 13?
Yeah, just before my 31st.
Yeah,
That's so young. Yeah, so young.
Not to be crude, but obviously financially secure as well. So it's not like you had to necessarily, I need to find a job to pay the bills. You'd obviously done well throughout your career. But then the fact that I've always thought this, if you retire young and you've got some money, so that means you don't have to go and work, that actually creates a problem in itself. Because when you retire, me and Sylvain have retired, and we actually, well, I know you're still doing a little bit of endurance racing, Sylvain, sorry. But I have to work. I've got to try and generate some income. Actually, having money can create a problem. I know that sounds...
No, I understand what you're saying.
Because it doesn't... So
it leaves you a lot of bar time.
Exactly.
If you want.
Which can be a big problem.
Which can absolutely become a problem. I felt like when I got done with 95 and felt like my commitment to motorcycling was done with my contract with Suzuki finished, I went and I tested the limits of how long you could stay in Australia, the 90-day visas. And I got into some car racing. Drove a little bit of NASCAR stuff down there. Drove some Super V8s. Drove some 2-liter touring cars for end of 95, beginning of 96, and then beginning of 97.
Wayne had done some, Gardner had done some of that.
Gardner was well into it at the point.
The touring car. Gardner.
Yeah, he was touring car racing.
Yeah.
And then I went and did some NASCAR stuff. So he's like, I'm going to come get in a NASCAR too. Well, of course, my first NASCAR race was on a road course. And there was a guy, Jim Richards, who was really, really hard to beat. And he beat himself. Had brake rotor fail a couple laps to go. 3-stint race. I went 3-2-1 and won the overall. So this was before Gardner got into a NASCAR. And he's like, oh, Schwantz is winning in a NASCAR. I got to get in that. So now he and I are banging doors a little bit in NASCAR racing. The first race on an oval, I stuck mine in the fence qualifying, didn't even get to race. But yeah, I was doing other stuff. I don't think he even picked up a motorcycle publication for a couple of years.
Yeah,
I just wanted to, because I knew, Suzuki's like, well, come back, help with the team. I was like, if I'm there, I'm going to have a set of leathers in the truck, and some rider's going to come in and say, you can't fucking ride this thing. I'm like, shut up, watch this. Let me show you. And that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to stay away. I did go back and race in 13 and 14, went back and rode the 8-hour. And I think that was because I was just about 50. It was midlife crisis. I just needed to, and I rode a 600 here in the States, club race, endurance race. I'd ride 2 stints in the summer in Texas and, 100, however many degree temperature. Like, I'm fit, I'm ready. And I went to Suzuka the first year, got on 1,000, hadn't been on 1,000. Got on 1,000, went 290 something K up the back straightaway. heart rate 190. Going straight to a corner. I said, I'm not doing anything. He's just scaring the shit out of myself is all I was doing.
What the fuck am I doing right
Yeah,
now?
and then got lucky that year. Was on a really good team and rode for just less than an hour. So it did get a stint in. We finished third. And then the next year, Suzuki had come to Coda to test. And then Yosh had heard about the test. They said, oh, we want to come because we're going to race there later this year. So I said, well, how about this? I'll get you guys in with the Grand Prix team and you can come test, but you got to bring me a superbike because I'm going back to do the 8-hour. I need to ride 1,000. The second year I went back, I was much better prepared. And my heart rate, I think, was 170 at the top of the back straightaway instead of 190. But, yeah, and then my teammate crashed it out of the race in the rain, which they said, we're going to get the bike back. We're going to get it rebuilt. I said, okay. I'm going to the bar. I'm not getting on it. If we're not in contention to win, those points don't mean anything to me.
Kevin, I'm intrigued. So we've talked through your career. When you started, you were around, Kenny Roberts, and you obviously witnessed what he has achieved. All the greats of your era. Then you look at Valentino Rossi or Marc Marquez. I'd love to know, how you rank. Who would be your top three with what you've seen, what you've experienced? If you were to name them, what order would they be in?
Well, I think we know Rossi can ride anything. He rode 500s. He rode a 125 for a season, then he won a championship. Rode a 250 for a season, won 500 for a season, won a championship. And Marquez seems to be able to ride anything. The Honda that nobody could do anything on, and he was winning races and winning championships on it. You can't take anything away from the guy, that's for sure. I understand there's some discrepancy on 125 and 250 in Moto 2 and Moto 3 championships counting, so he's only 7 times. However many it is, it's plenty.
He's done enough.
Yeah, he's done more than enough. We got asked that question. It was Mick, Wayne, myself, Creville. We were at Barcelona 10, 15 years ago, and Rossi. And the press conference, this question session, they said, okay, so everybody down the line, where would you finish in this group of 5? And they're like, I don't know, I'd be that. I said, I'm not sure where anybody finished. I said, Rossi be 5th. And all the freaking guys on the table were like, why didn't I think of that answer? Yeah, it's, younger generation, I'm sure that they're getting started so much earlier. They're riding those little pocket, like Rossi. I went and watched him. We had one of my red, white, and blue helmets on in 89. Watched him racing pocket bikes. And it's for me, it's difficult to watch a race and see how somebody's, that guy's 0.2 faster through that corner. Yeah, it's not something I can visually pick up. But Rossi's teammate was faster than everybody on the track visibly. And then when Rossi got on the bike, he was even that much faster than, and you could see it again. You're like, wow, what a difference. Then maybe that's just one kid in a group of a whole bunch of them that are pretty ordinary, but to be able to notice corner speed and how much further he's getting in on the brakes and just riding style.
Over the years, people you raced against, when you race closely with people for years, you see things. You'll follow someone, you think, wow, look at that! I can't believe he's done that.
How do you do that?
Who was your standout rider that you raced closer with? Obviously, I know your rivalry with Wayne we're well aware of, but did you witness other things where you're like, that was unreal? Or...
I don't think I ever saw it from Mick when I was racing him, but watching him, that friggin' front end push he has in the first turn at Phillip Island, we're just... And it's like, that was... turn 2 now. I was like, can you guys clean those out? Yeah, and Mick, when he was on, in 94, I saw him, I chased him in Jerez. I chased him, broke the lap record, the last lap of the race, chasing him, and he still beat me. But yeah, I mean, once he got between his style and the Honda figured out,
Yeah, that was.
You know, I don't.
Some partnership.
I don't regret not being there for 4 seasons of an ass whooping he'd have probably given me, but yeah, I mean, after I retired, he kind of had his run with it, didn't he?
Yeah, he dominated, didn't
What's the magic then? Because she talks about your personality and Wayne's, for example. You mentioned Mick there, or Valentino, or Mark, and all these, you great legends of the sport. What is the magic? We were talking about it in the car, weren't we?
What's the difference?
What's the ingredient? What is it, do you think? Because you are different personalities across the board.
Yeah. You know, I think it goes back to the garage, and the guys in the garage that you got that much confidence in, whether it's a Jerry Burgess or whether it's a Simon Tong early in my career, whether it's Stuart Shenton. When Stuart would say, hey, Kev, I'd tell him what the bike was doing that I didn't like, give them all the debrief that that they could stand. I'd leave. When I'd come back, I told him that I wanted him to tell me what that bike would do or what that bike should do now that it was doing earlier that I didn't like. How is it going to be different? To just give me an idea of what to expect. And Stuart was really, really good at translating that to me. He said, okay, we didn't stick any ride height to it, but maybe we changed the offset just a bit. We've put a little more spring in the back or whatever. But instead of it wanting to run to the outside of the track at the top of the finish in Austria, that big fast right-hander is your finish, instead of you having to use all the track, it's going to want to hold its line better. It may be a little quick to move in the back, just pay attention. But detail like that, instead of, we threw all this shit at it, you got to tell us. We got no idea what it's going to be. And that's not necessarily what I had with Simon, but Simon wasn't nearly as good about telling me exactly what to expect of it. And, I think the guys that you got in the garage, the more you work with them, the more you know them, the more you watch them work.
Builds confidence.
The more you trust them.
Absolutely. I mean, you trust them with your life. You're like, yeah, I know you got those calipers tight. Yeah. I know you got everything done right. I used to still, to the end of my career, I'd give my guys grief about cleaning the wheels. I was like, keep that fucking rag with that shiny shit on it away from the tires, because just drag that thing on the edge of the tire. That's going to affect it a little bit. I used to be really finicky about that.
So you think it's that connection?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean,
It's overlooked that a lot.
Yeah. I've never heard anyone say that.
I don't think we changed any as riders. Yeah, maybe my my technique in the beginning was, I sat, watch me in the '88 Grand Prix, and I'm just sticking this leg. I'm not moving off the seat. I'm sitting dead center. Well, then I start to realize as the '88 season's running on, why am I having a hard time staying with these guys at the end of the race? Well, my bike's not as fast, but my bike's is all over the place. So it's because you're, almost dragging the end of the bar everywhere. Get it off the edge of the tire. That's why you hang off the bike a little bit. Keep the bike a little more upright, a little bit bigger contact patch. We start to adjust our styles a little bit. Like I talked about Mick, when he finally came into his own in 92, then got hurt, 93 coming back. But man, in 94, I don't think he made any mistakes, and he was really, really hard to beat. But yeah, I think, we fine-tune ourselves as riders just a little bit, but it's getting that beast of a thing to ride every weekend to where it's something that you're never going to be comfortable on it, but where you're almost comfortable. If it's comfortable, it's probably not going to work. It's got to be just a little bit uncomfortable. And I remember making a change to my bike. I was like, it feels like this thing, it's so heavy across the top. I can't get the thing to change direction. He's like, yeah, but you're complaining about it not sitting and turning. He said, we had to lower the bike a little bit, which means it's not gonna change direction. Actually, a lower bike it's gonna change direction quicker. But as soon as you start to turn it, that lower center of gravity, it's just gonna want to go straight. So we had to raise it up. So you just have to muscle up, get after it a little bit. Okay, just put it that way, then it's on me. But yeah, I think having the guys in the garage that you're just, you go to bed at night. You don't think about the bike, not at all, because you know it's there.
Can relate to that.
Were you hoping that Kevin was going to say you? Is there anyone you'd seen out there? Is that what you were hoping for? Those 3 races in 1995. Is that what?
I mean, me and Kevin raced against each other. I've got to say this, Kevin, and I don't. We've obviously bigged you up all the way through this interview. but every now and again, you've got to deal with facts. Now, facts don't lie, do they?
Go on, what have you got here?
So I was checking, because I knew in 95 we raced against each other. So I decided to have a look at that championship. And really, people can have a one-off good ride, but your championship position really tells you where you are as a rider. So in 1995, Gav, as you know, I'd raced in 500s for the first time. I was a young 21-year-old, privateer, rookie, and I finished 11th in the world. And then I sort of scrolled down, and I looked a little bit further down, and there's a Mr. Kevin Schwantz, and he'd finished 15th in the world. So, Kev, we only race against each other once in a championship. But a win's a win, and I'm taking the moral victory. I mean, you've always been my hero, but things did change after that year. The poster in my bedroom, I just had to, thank you.
I thought we were going to have to get out.
This is the bit where you go, get out of my house.
It's funny because I stopped after the.
You did 3 races. We did check.
Australia, Malaysia, Japan, and I quit. And when I retired, I actually retired with 34 points.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And I had no idea that I didn't ride to try and finish 4th and 5th and 6th
That's
to get 34 points.
Freaky.
But as they announced my number of retirement, they said, and the irony in it is, this season he's got 34 World Championship points too. So
It was meant to be.
yeah, something about it. It was it. It was the right time.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why I haven't ever second guessed. Like, no, I had 34 points. It had to be the time to quit, didn't it? Not 33, and not 50, and not any other number, but. So.
Super.
It's not like a rider to be superstitious, is it?
No.
Kevin, we have taken up far too much of your time, but we appreciate all the stories.
I have a hard time talking to you guys about this stuff, don't I?
Yeah. No, honestly, we do appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'm sure everyone at home will too.
It's been an honor.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks once again for Kevin giving up his time for us. I know the recording's a little bit shonky in terms of the video. If you're watching on the YouTube version, it's worth it to see some of his reactions, see him, really telling those stories, the glassy-eyed mentions of Wayne Rainey and the end to that 1993 World Championship, all absolutely worth it. But I do apologise for our shonky recording. We had about 10 minutes to set everything up. And as you've heard from previous audio in previous podcasts, we are not sound engineers and we are not cameramen either. But hopefully you'll agree that was worth sitting down and getting that from Kevin. We could have spent another couple of hours there. I'm sure you could have done listening to it. We do want your comments about it as well at Gas It Out on Instagram and on YouTube, chaps. But it was, I don't know, people have heard all the interview now, but for us, we're all going to remember that, aren't we?
Yeah, for me, like I said, fanboy, but there were loads of things he said that I didn't realise. I didn't realise he'd done a supercross, for example, or almost how short his career was, how he went from riding on tarmac for the first time to being racing in 500s. That just, it happened so quick, didn't it? So that was a bit surprising. I wasn't surprised, if I'm going to be honest, to see his reaction when we talked about Wayne, when we talked about the 93 championship and obviously what happened at Misano. I wasn't surprised, but that upset me. I'm sure you guys felt it, sat so close to him, to see what it still meant to him, how raw it still was. So no, it was we were very lucky to sit in that room with him, and I thought it was fantastic.
Yeah, absolutely. And Sylvain, yeah, I could just see, because obviously you didn't get that many questions in, because obviously he's telling all these stories there, but you look to me captivated by it all.
Yeah, well, I mean, most of the interview, I was just sat there in just listening to his words, and I didn't want to cut it or ask anything else, because I thought, you know, his train of thoughts and the way he was telling the stories were just absolutely brilliant. So yeah, most of it, I just sat there taking it all in, you know, listening to a great champion, you know, telling us what he went through, the ups and the downs of racing at the time, and so many stories as well that we can relate to now. You know, like Neil said, the obviously with the story with Wayne Rainey, with all the adversity, and as well, you know, the Americans at the time that were like racing each other and wanted to be top dog. He was just so good. So yeah, I was trying to interrupt him as least as possible, and he gave us so much there. It was such a pleasure to hear the all those words, and for Kevin to tell us the stories, you know, from his mouth straight out. It was very, very special. Yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for listening. If you are still listening, we want to hear your thoughts. What were your favourite bits? Mine was definitely about the team behind, you know, what's the secret to the legends, to the champions, and it is, you know, having that team behind. I thought it was fascinating. I've got this Schwantz app. I think we should give it away. What do you reckon?
Not after you've had it on your greasy
It's literally
head.
the first time I've worn it. This is
Jesus
this was
Christ, talk
from.
about devaluing something that's cool, Gav.
Was it a couple of years ago? And he gave us this, Neil. You remember?
Yeah, it was a couple of
the
years ago.
30th anniversary. And I remember thinking then, wow, 30 years. It's a long
Yeah, but how many
ago,
times have you worn it?
Yeah, that's all I ever were. All I ever were.
Yeah.
Anyway,
give it away.
I think
Let's
well,
give it away.
let us know if you think that you know you'd be interested in it. At Gas It Out Pod on Instagram, YouTube, wherever. Get in touch with us. And thanks for listening. We appreciate it.
Also, just quickly,
go on.
Sylvain, are you going to give away that RST t-shirt as well?
Yeah, I can do. Look,
Yeah,
I'm representing.
representing.
Yeah,
Best
love
leathers
it.
out there.
It's the new collection. You can find it on, is it rst.com, on the RST website.
Moto Direct, possibly.
Was it Moto Direct? Yeah.
I don't know, but
All right, you two. Right.
all right, we're just getting it in.
What am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do? My Alpine Stars Dainese deal. What are they going to be saying about all this? Anyway, as always, we thank you for listening. And if in doubt, gas it out.